you, Ezra, and everyone who made this possible. I'd like to introduce the film because I see a mixed audience here of people from South Asia and people who are not from South Asia, and so it's always a dilemma for me of how much I should introduce. But I think I'll begin with the caste system itself, which is perhaps the oldest form of exploitation human beings have practiced. That continues to this day. Our region, our part of the world, I won't call it India because there was no India in those days. We're talking about maybe 3,000 years ago or maybe even more, because we don't know exactly when the caste system began. But our region is divided broadly into four broad categories, with the priests at the top, the kings and warriors just below them, and then the traders below that, the merchants, and then the working class. And beneath the working class were the people who did the dirtiest jobs, the people who were called untouchables. They were considered untouchables because they had to do not just manual labor, but scavenging and all kinds of labor that was considered not pure. This caste system has, as I said, lasted for 3,000 years, but there has always, in all that time, there was always resistance to it. And that is something that our history books don't tell us very clearly, at least in India. And that is that there were people from even before Christ that fought against this caste system, fought against this exploitation. The most famous of these is the Buddha, who actually started a new religion that didn't believe in caste. And then through time, through the ages, there have been others who have fought the caste system and religious oppression. And foremost amongst them is somebody who came from the untouchable community. I say untouchable within quotation marks because that is what they were known as. As you know, when the Indian fight for independence was going on, Mahatma Gandhi changed their name to Harijans, which means children of God. In his own way, he was fighting untouchability, but that was not good enough for the people who came from that community itself. They considered this concept of children of God very patronizing, because they said, if you are the children of God, then if we are the children of God, then who are you? So they chose the term Dalits, which means the oppressed, to signify what had happened through history. Dr. Ambedkar was someone who was able to get, the Dalit community was kept in their place also because the system practiced, did not allow people from this community to get learning. They could not study. They were by religious decree, they were banned from acquiring learning. And Dr. Ambedkar's father, as some people from his community were part of the British Army in those days, and they were able, and because of that he was able to give his children some education. Dr. Ambedkar actually got educated, got a scholarship to go to America, and got a PhD from Columbia University in economics, then went and did a degree in the London School of Economics, and also became a lawyer. And then he came back to India and soon became a champion of his people, not just his people, but in fact of the whole country, because he was fighting against caste oppression all over the country. Dr. Ambedkar's work in some ways did get recognition, because eventually Gandhi invited him to be the author of the Indian Constitution. When India became independent, Dr. Ambedkar was the main draftsperson for the Indian Constitution. And so the Indian Constitution is a very egalitarian constitution in its essence. But you can change the law, but you can't change the mindset of people. And so the caste system still persisted. And finally, Dr. Ambedkar got so fed up with what he saw around him that he decided to walk out of Hinduism and became a Buddhist. And along with him, thousands of his followers became Buddhists. So it was the largest conversion in history. Probably 500,000 people converted on a single day to Buddhism. That was in 1956. I'll go fast forward to how this film began. And that brings us to 1997, when a statue of Dr. Ambedkar, because Dr. Ambedkar was venerated by not only his own community, but by others also who were the oppressed in India. And a statue of his in a colony where Dalits lived in Bombay, which is called Mumbai by some people, was desecrated. Somebody put a garland of footwear on his statue, which is a calculated insult to put Dalits in that place. The people woke up in the morning to find the statue of Ambedkar desecrated, and they came out on the street to protest. And within a few minutes, the police arrived and shot into the crowd without warning. They killed 10 people on the spot. And they killed not just the demonstrators, but they shot into the colony and killed people, men, women, and children. 4 days later, a friend of mine who was a musician from this community, his name was Vilas Gogre, and I had filmed him many years ago in a film some of you might have seen called Bombay Our City, on the slums of Bombay. His was a song that I used throughout that film. Vilas went to this place, saw what had happened, and got so depressed and angered that he committed suicide. He hung himself in his own hut. And from that time onwards, I started to make this film. That was in 1997. And the film took 14 years to complete, and it went in many different directions, which you'll see. So I won't apologize for the fact that it's 3 hours long. It's 3 hours long because it has to be that long to tell the story that it's telling. I'll only reassure you that it isn't that boring, because there's a lot of amazing music in it. Because the film, Vilas was a musician, and I had the privilege of recording a lot of his music. I couldn't film him except for that one moment when I filmed him for that one film that I did, but I recorded a lot of his songs. So I've used those songs in the film, but I also started to follow other musicians like him. So the film is an exploration of the music of protest. It's also an exploration of the court cases that began against the police, and then the police put court cases against the people they had shot into, because that's what the police always does. They do counter cases against the people that they shot at. So those court cases took their own many years of unraveling. And then I also explored another aspect, which is that Vilas was not just a Dalit, born a Dalit, but Vilas was also a Marxist. Vilas when I met him the first time, he was already in a Marxist party. And so the film is also an exploration of caste and class, and how these sometimes coincide, and how there are tensions between these two concerns, these two ways of identity. So it's a very complicated film. That's why I think it would be good if you don't follow Dolores's dictum of taking notes, because if you take notes, you'll actually miss what's going on the screen. So no, I know you're used to doing it, but it's inevitable. You can't. The film is, you really need to. It's not in your language. You have to read the subtitles. So if you miss the link, you won't understand what the next thing is saying. So it's better to try to absorb it, and maybe when you get a chance, see the film again and then take notes. But this time, don't take notes. Well, the film can't tell lies, so I can't offer, I can't create the hope artificially, but the film, to me, does provide a lot of hope. And in fact, no, I'll just explain further. I myself, when I finished the film, thought I'd made a very depressing film, that it was actually like everything that was being fought for hadn't succeeded. I mean, the police never went to jail. So even after 12 years, 14 years, that was the situation. But then when I started showing the film in the community, when I took the film to the areas where I had shot and all over the, in Maharashtra, in the slums of Bombay, and we had thousands of people watching the film, and everybody said that the film was in fact reminding them of the movement when it was at its peak, and the music that the movement has created. And so in many ways the film was affirming the grassroots dynamism that exists in the community. So whether or not the leadership sells out or whatever happens, that is the hope that we see in a country like India, that no matter what the betrayals have been, and there have been many, the people haven't given up. The people are fighting in every part of the country. So I think that's where, if you look for the hope, you'll find it. Yeah, there's pressure not only to finish the film fast, but there's also pressure to make it 51 minutes or 81 minutes or whatever the slot there is. And so it's hard to get into the depth of a subject if you have those constraints. And for that reason, I don't look for funding before I make a film. I try to make the film with my own money, recycle money from my previous films, or do other things. Because if I was dependent on the industry, then I would end up making products that the industry makes most of the time. So, no, I don't know, I'm not there. What I'm saying is that, so it's something, it's a decision that you have to make as a filmmaker, take and let the film take you where it will. Because if you what I don't do when I'm making a film, I really don't have an idea of what I'm doing. And what I'm doing in the sense, I have a vague idea of why I'm making the film, and perhaps even a strong, of course there's a strong motivation to make the film on that subject, but I don't write scripts, and the whole film gets created over a long period of time. On the editing table I start seeing what it's saying and then shooting more to go in the directions that the material is taking me. So that's, in a nutshell, that's how it's edited. And even the research didn't come before I made the film. The research came through the process of making the film. And I started learning more and more about the subject that I was making the film about. Sometimes, I mean, I sometimes shoot a lot of stuff which never becomes a film. So inevitably, I mean, I have my own camera and I record everything that I find interesting, and sometimes it becomes a film, and sometimes it just becomes archival material which may some other day be useful. Yeah, I mean, I think especially for the Dalit movement, music was absolutely essential. I mean, music was the medium that soon after Ambedkar began posing all these questions, music was used as a vehicle to spread what he was saying and what others were saying, even before him. And so, yeah, because as you said, it was a non-literate audience by and large, and music carried this message everywhere, and to a large extent still does. So what happens in an urban setting is, well, you can see what happened here. I mean, we started out with a fairly full house and we have only 50%, even with the music. So the music doesn't work for everyone. Yeah, I was trying to get at that. Actually, this is easily the most accessible film that I've made in India. In terms of Indian working class audiences, this is the film that I can show anywhere in Maharashtra, and hundreds and thousands of people gather to see it. And see it even standing up sometimes because there's not enough chairs. But almost inversely proportionate to that is its reception in, say, film festivals outside India and in the so-called elite circles of the world. because there it's considered too long, the subject is too remote, they can't get into caste system, they can't relate the fact that there is a caste system everywhere. That you might think that there's a caste system only in India, and in India it's a blatant caste system that is called a caste system. But what you say of the western part of the world where the word Palestinian, what are they then? Are they not another caste? Who's when you bring them it doesn't matter? You're right, there is a lot of anti-religion in the film, and there's a lot of, there was, Dr. Ambedkar, when he was searching for, he actually decided at some point that in a country like India, if he was going to appeal to his people to get rid of this religion that had treated them so wrongly and unjustly, that he would have to replace that, that it would be hard to find a way to move out of this religion without giving some alternative belief system. But he then went about choosing which belief system would be most appropriate. And he found in Buddhism a religion that is not exactly a religion, because it doesn't even talk about God. Buddhism doesn't have a concept of God. Buddhism only has a concept of human beings trying to get better. And and then even Buddhism, Ambedkar didn't take Buddhism per se. He reinterpreted it in the way that he saw it. For instance, there are aspects of Buddhism as it is practiced in many parts of the world which he completely rejected, like the idea of reincarnation. Many Buddhists believe in reincarnation. The Tibetan Buddhists look for the Dalai Lama, and some kid will be born somewhere else and he'll be the Dalai Lama and all of that stuff, which Ambedkar didn't follow. He rejected the concept of reincarnation.
Wasn't he treated kind of like a god after that?
Yeah, but then there are people within the community that are questioning that, and you saw that in the film. There were people who are in the film. There were people who were critiquing the fact that there's a danger of even Ambedkar being turned into a god. And even at the end, unfortunately, people were so anxious to get up while the credits were rolling that they missed what was being sung at the end. I mean, in that song, you see that what she's singing is, come out of that statue, come out of those hymns. And Ambedkar will be born again, but he will not be born as a reincarnation. He will be born from you and me. He'll be born from the people. It's the idea of Ambedkar, not Ambedkar per se. It's not a big question, but it's not a difficult question to answer. The state of democracy is as healthy in India as it is in America or Canada. I don't mean to be facetious, but I mean in the sense that people like me, who are from the elite, who are know English and can get our voices heard, there is quite a lot of democracy for us. I mean, I get away with making these films. Eventually I fight, I go to court, I win my cases, and I use the Indian system to do that. I even get national awards sometimes. So it is a complex system, but you wouldn't say that it's a democracy in the sense that if I was a Dalit, if I was a Muslim working class, that wouldn't be the same story wouldn't apply. So, but I don't think that is very different from what it is here or in America. I mean, I think that there are issues which are taboo, which cannot be talked about. If you talk about them, you're called the worst of all things, which is a liberal.
With all due respect, Mr. Anand, I'm thankful to you. It's bravo, really, that you have exposed at least one community of India that is under oppression. But I was thinking that you will also somewhere make it known that Dr. Ambedkar admitted in 1953, it's in the proceedings of the government of India, that it was not him, it's not his discretion or his proceeds that complete the Constitution of India. It was made to be written like that. He said if he find the opportunity, he will burn it right here.
No.
That's why.
No, that is a misquotation. You can show me that, and you can correct me, but I'm almost 99.9% sure that he never said that he would burn the Constitution. What he said is quoted in the film, that if this Constitution does not deliver to my people, then my people will bring it down. That's what he said. He didn't say he'll burn the Constitution.
Right now, it's not in front of me or the quotation is me.
No, it's not true.
I can post it to your...
You can post it to me, but there are many things that people say which are hearsay. Unless you show me the actual book where it's printed, I won't believe that, because I've done enough research about this.
But because of the shortcoming in the...
And Ambedkar definitely was the main author of the Constitution. Nobody denies that. Except Arun Shari sometimes did. Yeah.
Okay, but as I can just see through the film, the way the justice is served, it is not only to the Dalits, it's to the most of the minorities in India, that the judicial system is not perfectly democratic, it's diocratic.
You're right that judiciary, it depends on how the judges are appointed and who the judges are. I mean, you have in America right-wing judges that were appointed by Ronald Reagan, and they made sure that George Bush won the election when he actually lost the election. So there are judges that at given moments in power are those kind of judges, and they take wrong decisions. But that doesn't mean we would throw out the whole justice system. We would just try to change those judges.
This is an activist diaspora question. Thank you, first of all, for the film. It seems pretty clear how people in the diaspora are opposed in Hindutva. You know, we identify the people in exile or in diaspora who fund the various organizations. It's sometimes clear who they are, sometimes politicians support them and they don't, but what does Dalit solidarity or Dalit support look like for
outside of
in
North
America? And you're also in the diaspora right now, and you're in Minnesota.
Well, let me do this. Are there any Dalits in the audience? That gives you the answer. That gives you the answer it's not true that there are no Dalits in Canada, but we live in circles that don't mix very much, even when we are abroad. So whatever the Malays is in India, that Malays gets carried forward into other countries. We don't mix across class lines, we don't mix across probably not even across religious lines too often, although sometimes we do, as long as the class is okay. But along caste lines, it's rare. I mean, if you look, ask yourself the intermarriage question, because that is the critical. If you really want to get rid of the caste system, it would go away if generation after generation did intercaste marriage. But our whole system is structured so that people marry into their own caste. They advertise for their own caste, their narrow community, and they marry into that caste, and they do it in perpetuity.
Yes, we're doing a round of applause for Anand.